There is only one pitcher in baseball history who threw 7 no-hitters. 1. In 150 years of professional baseball, with thousands of pitchers taking the mound in tens of thousands of games, one man threw 7 no-hitters. Nolan Ryan. The 6th had come in 1990. He was 43 years old and had thrown it against the Oakland Athletics, and everyone who watched it understood they were seeing something that would never happen again. A 43-year-old pitcher throwing a no-hitter. The final entry in an impossible career. The last page of a story that had already gone further than any story of its kind had any right to go. Ryan himself seemed to understand it that way. He didn't say the 6th was the last, but the way he talked about it, with a completeness, a finality, suggested that somewhere inside him he believed it was. Then 1991 arrived. Then May 1st arrived. Then Toronto arrived. And Nolan Ryan, 44 years old, bad knee, graying hair, teammates young enough to be his children, walked to the mound at Arlington Stadium and began throwing a baseball the way only he had ever thrown it. What happened over the next 3 hours was not supposed to be possible. Ryan himself, standing on the mound in the 9th inning with 2 outs and the realization building, thought the same thing. Is this possible? Is this actually happening again? To understand the 7th no-hitter, you need to understand what 44 years old meant for a baseball pitcher in 1991. It meant ancient. It meant finished. It meant that whatever you had once been, the body had reclaimed most of it and was in the process of reclaiming the rest. The average career length for a major league pitcher in 1991 was approximately 5 years. The elite pitchers, the ones with the talent and the luck and the conditioning to survive longer, might last 10 or 12. Ryan had been pitching professionally since 1966, 25 years. His body was a document of every inning, every pitch, every decision to throw one more fastball when the arm was already tired. His knees had been managed and repaired and managed again. His shoulder had survived things that ended other careers. His conditioning was legendary. He lifted weights and ran and maintained himself with a discipline that was unusual in baseball, even among players half his age. But 44 was 44. The tissue was older. The recovery was slower. The margin for error was smaller than it had ever been. Every start in 1991 was a negotiation between what Ryan's mind wanted to do and what his body was still capable of delivering. On May 1st, for 9 innings, the body delivered everything. The Toronto Blue Jays in 1991 were not a weak lineup. This matters. A no-hitter against a weak lineup carries a different weight than a no-hitter against genuine talent. Toronto had Roberto Alomar, had Joe Carter, had Devin White, had a collection of professional hitters who would help that franchise win the World Series the following year. They were not a team that handed no-hitters to anyone. They came to Arlington on May 1st with a lineup that had been producing all season and with no particular reason to believe this game would be different from any other. Nolan Ryan was pitching. Ryan was old. Ryan had been having an inconsistent season. There were nights when the fastball was still there and nights when it wasn't. The Blue Jays had seen inconsistent veteran pitchers before. They prepared normally. They took batting practice normally. They went through their pre-game routines normally. And then the game started. First inning, Ryan's fastball was moving, not at 100 miles per hour. Those days were behind him, but at 93, 94, with the late movement that had always made his fastball more dangerous than raw speed alone could explain. The Blue Jays hitters felt it immediately. That specific quality of Ryan's stuff on a good night. The ball arriving in a slightly different location than the release point suggested. The late cut that made the barrel miss by fractions. Toronto went down in order. Second inning, down in order. Third, fourth. Ryan was not thinking about a no-hitter. What no pitcher thinks about a no-hitter in the early innings. The baseball superstition against mentioning it is rooted in something real. The moment you start thinking about what you're preserving, you stop thinking about what you're doing. Ryan was thinking about the hitter, about the count, about what pitch in what location gave him the best chance to get this particular batter out. One pitch at a time, one out at a time. The no-hitter was building in the background of something else, which was Nolan Ryan simply pitching the way Nolan Ryan pitched when everything was working. By the sixth inning, the Rangers' dugout knew. Players knew the way players always know, not from anyone saying it, because nobody was saying it, but from the specific quality of attention that a dugout develops when something is happening that might be historic. The scoreboard showed zeros in the Toronto hit column. The crowd of 43,521 people at Arlington Stadium was getting louder with each inning, building towards something, the collective energy of an audience that understands it is watching a moment that may not come again. Ryan was aware of it. He had been through this 6 times. He knew how the atmosphere changed in the late innings of a no-hitter, knew the specific weight that settled onto every pitch, knew that the hardest part was not getting to the 9th inning but staying present in the 9th inning, not thinking about history, not thinking about the number 7, just throwing the next pitch to the next batter in the next count, just doing the thing you have done for 25 years, just pitching. 7th inning, 3 up, 3 down. 8th inning, 3 up, 3 down. 24 batters, 24 outs. Ryan walked to the dugout after the 8th and sat down, and his teammates gave him the space that baseball players give a pitcher in that situation. Nobody sat next to him. Nobody spoke to him. The superstition and the respect combined into the same gesture. Leave him alone. Let him stay in whatever place he's in. The crowd was standing. Had been standing since the 7th. Arlington Stadium in May with 43,000 people on their feet, and the scoreboard showing zeros, is a specific and unrepeatable experience. And everyone in that stadium, on that night, understood that they were inside something they would tell people about for the rest of their lives. Subscribe if you've ever watched something happen that you knew you'd remember forever. Hit like if Nolan Ryan is the greatest pitcher who ever lived. And drop a comment. Where were you when you heard about the 7th no-hitter? Because the 9th inning was unlike anything Arlington had ever seen. 9th inning. Ryan walked to the mound and the stadium became something beyond loud. It became physical. The sound had weight, had texture. 43,000 people pouring everything they had into this moment, willing this old man's arm to hold for 3 more outs, understanding that what they were watching was the last chapter of something irreplaceable, and wanting it to end the right way. First batter. Ryan worked carefully. Got him out. 2 outs to go. Second batter. Manny Lee. Veteran. Disciplined. Ryan threw carefully, deliberately, with the full experience of 25 years informing every pitch selection, every location, every decision about when to go to the fastball and when to change speeds. Lee grounded out. 1 out left. Roberto Alomar, 23 years old, one of the most gifted hitters of his generation. The matchup that the moment deserved. Old against young. Experience against talent. 44 against 23. Ryan got ahead in the count, worked it carefully, and then threw the pitch that ended it. Alomar hit a fly ball to center field. Gary Pettis settled under it, caught it, and Nolan Ryan had his 7th no-hitter. At 44 years old, against a lineup that would win the World Series the following year. What Ryan did after the final out is the part that stays with people who were there. He didn't leap, didn't pump his fist, didn't run toward the dugout with his arms raised. He stood on the mound, alone for just a moment, before his teammates reached him. And in that moment, he looked around the stadium, at the 43,000 people on their feet, at the scoreboard, at the Texas night sky above Arlington. He had thrown 6 no-hitters over 23 years, had broken every strikeout record, had survived trades and injuries and the ordinary erosion of age. And now this, the 7th, the one that nobody had seen coming, the one he himself hadn't seen coming. His teammates arrived, and the celebration became the normal, beautiful chaos of teammates celebrating something extraordinary. But that moment alone on the mound, that look around the stadium, was the one the cameras captured and the one that people remembered. Because it was the face of a man who understood, in real time, that he had just done something that would never be done again. Ryan pitched 2 more seasons after the 7th no-hitter. His knee gave out in September 1993, and he left the field in the middle of a game and didn't come back. No ceremony, no formal farewell, just injury and absence and then retirement. But the 7th no-hitter had already given him the ending the career deserved. Not the final day, the final statement. At 44 years old, against a World Series caliber lineup, throwing the baseball the way only he had ever thrown it, for 9 innings, in front of 43,000 people who would spend the rest of their lives telling people they were there. That was the statement. 7 no-hitters, 1 pitcher, 150 years of professional baseball. And nobody else close. Nolan Ryan stood on that mound in Arlington on May 1, 1991, and threw the last great chapter of the greatest pitching career in the history of the sport. And when it was over, he looked around the stadium, the way a man looks at something he knows he will never see again, because he knew. They all knew. Some things happen once, some things happen 7 times, and some things only happen if your name is Nolan Ryan.